All right, that's noon. Let's rock. And first of all, a big congratulations to everyone in this room. You guys did an awesome job. You just made your dream game. It's Monday night, it launches at midnight. You secured some big stores, they're going to do the big thing. They're lining up around the block. They're impressed with your game. They want to come play it. But there's a problem. Your customer support team's already getting people calling in that they're having some issue installing the game, but not quite clear what it is yet. So what are we going to do about that? For those of you in the room that you've already made the switch to mobile, you're not making these crappy packaged good things anymore, don't feel so smug. They're in that line, they're playing your game, and the store isn't working, so you can't sell your stuff, and that's a big problem for you guys. What are you going to do about that? Well, my name's Ash, I'm from EA, and when I made this at least, I was in the team called Launch Readiness, and we work with games like these ones to help plan out their teams and the processes they would go through. So this is the kind of background I'm coming from in presenting this material to you guys, but it should be relevant to pretty much anybody, I think. So what are we going to cover? I'm going to talk about the runway to launch, so really the development period of the game, way to structure your teams, the materials to produce, and best practices to practice, the launch window itself, so the triage flow, communications you might want to do at that point. And I had to cut a lot out of this to make it fit into the 25, 30 minutes. So if there's not time for questions, I'm happy to take it to the wrap-up room afterwards, or you can come grab me on the show floor. So let's go. Runway to launch. Let's go back to our angry Best Buy guy. So the customer support team started gathering some more info on what the problem was, and they've narrowed it down to it's the PC pre-order customers that have got the packaged goods version of the game. They're expecting a limited edition version because they pre-ordered, but when they install it, they're missing that extra limited edition content, whatever that was, extra gun, map, that stuff is missing. So what might the communication chain look like in trying to solve a challenge like that? Well, we started off with the customer support team working directly with the player. Hopefully they've got a contact in the actual game development team to pass this off to, this information. Well, the game team's split up into different pods, and one of those pods is commerce, it's AI, graphics, whatever. So they have to find the right person in the game team to give this to. They start digging through the game code. It looks good, that content's there, this should all be working fine, not my problem. Let's find someone else. All right, let's give it to the publishing team. That's what we might call them here. That's the guys that get the discs in the box and the codes printed there and everything. So they go and check. Did the printers put the wrong codes in the box? Did they get smeared and not print very well? Issues that I've seen happen. No, in this case, it's all fine, not a problem. Okay, what's the next thing? Well, what do those codes represent? Let's go, I've got it here, a SKU team, or catalog team, whatever, whoever configures what those codes represent. Let's dig through and see what they've configured. There's your problem. They've got it set up to give you the game, but not the extra stuff as well for the limited edition code. So tap, 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 fixed. So that's good for everyone that's going to install the game from that point, but what about everyone who already has? We've got to fix those guys up. So I've got it here as identity team, the player accounts team, whatever it is. They put a script together, run that through so that all the accounts that have already had this problem are granted that flag on their account for that content. Okay, problem solved, that was good. It was maybe slow, not ideal, but what can we do to fix that? Well, first of all, I wondered who spoke to QA at any point during this. Did they verify this was actually a problem? Did they try and install it in the game themselves with some retail copies of the game? Did they check it was fixed once the catalog got updated? Did they check it worked for players that already had the problem after that script was run? No idea. It's not represented here. No one was necessarily responsible for telling them this stuff. What about all these other teams that maybe should or could have been informed? They're not all necessarily going to need to be, but put it on them to decide, right? So let's just take, for example, data or analytics. That team may want to know about this because it could impact some of their telemetry analysis. They might see no one's using this gun. Well, that's just dumb for us to make that, right? It might affect your DLC plan going forward or future plans. So knowing that, they can take that into account when they're doing their analysis. The social team, they could have helped. By knowing there was a problem, they could quite easily put out a tweet or Facebook post or something saying, hey guys, there's a problem, we know about it, we're on it. And then once it's fixed, hey, it's all fixed, go ahead, install the game, no more fear. So that would have stopped people, hopefully, calling into your customer support could be a large volume. So they could have helped you guys. And it could have carried on with the rest of these teams. Not all of them will care. Like the IT team might not have anything to do with them, but let them decide how it affects them and if they can help. So what would we do with launch readiness as a process? We would define up front that group of partners that the game team has to work with. So we've got marketing, we've got the IT guys for building servers, the game team themselves. It's a big list, and obviously EA is a big company, and we have a lot of our own internal resources. And some of these circles represent actually quite large portions of the company, but we filter it down. We don't want 60 people in these meetings to figure out these plans. We try and filter it down to a dozen or so, and have that one person represent a lot of people behind them and filter information through them. And we see it as more effective that way. Yeah, so the point of having this group really is so that everyone knows who to speak to. It makes it way easier. And if you don't know who to speak to, you know the group of people to ask, and they will figure out if they're the right person. You can say what your work is. They can tell you what they require from you, so you can align your dependencies and figure out what work there is to do, because there's probably something you don't know someone else requires from you. And when they need it by you might be expected to do things much later. So you can align those dependencies and get clarity of ownership of those tasks as well. You might think that, hey, the marketing team is going to take care of all the screenshots, right? Well, no, they'll take care of publishing them and doing stuff with them, but they want you, as a game team, perhaps, to produce them and take them, so that you can get ownership, clarity of ownership of things like that. And it really helps to get clarity of insight into changes to the plan. Hey, we want to do a demo now. Okay, great, we're going to have to completely remove all the stuff around, and then you can maybe make that decision or not to do that stuff. So define your partners up front. And they can be external too, and we'll get to that. So once you've got that group, some recommended materials that we would say that teams should be producing. These are kind of backwards, actually, in what order you might do them in. So towards the end of the project and then maybe earlier in the project. But we'll start with 24/7 coverage. This is mostly for the launch, and it could be, I say launch, it could be any event, really. It could be like the main game launch itself, or if you have a beta or a demo for that, or if you have a particularly big other beats, like a huge website launch or announce of the game, E3, something like that, you may want to have a coverage plan for that. If you're a big team, like a Battlefield, then you probably do have enough people to staff 24/7. We have people in Stockholm do one shift, in Europe time, we have a team here in LA do one, and then maybe we've got people in Asia or someone just works through the night. So you can define that out. But if you're a small team, like Garden Warfare was, they just said, okay, this is our regular day that they worked. And then they just defined who was going to be on call for the rest of that time. That's pretty obvious stuff. Countdown to launch calendar. This one is more of a tactical list of events that need to happen for that launch event to take place, right? So if we said it's the retail game launch, we might say the game is going to final at this point, so we're going to send it to certification at this point. We're going to get it back out of cert at this point, which means our servers are free to then, reboot or whatever at this time. We're going to have a press event, so we make sure we don't touch anything, break anything then. And then we have those midnight launches, for example. And to fix that problem we had before, we would have different columns to explain what time we're talking about. So we'd have the local time of the event, so midnight launch in Asia, which is why we had this problem in the first place, that the game was coming out early, is because it went Tuesday midnight in Asia. That's actually Monday PST, sometime PST. So we'd have that in there with the PST because we're here, and if it was Battlefield, we'd have Stockholm in there. And so you make it very, very explicit about what time everyone's talking about. So that's that one. Data dictionary. This is really the details of the data your game is producing, and it could be the telemetry events, your analysts can use it. It could be the save file, so you can recreate one if you needed to, or the server-side data in case you needed to restore that. But probably the most important thing that I've seen it used for is player ownership of content, like how is that flagged? So in our example before, the players were missing the limited edition content. What data is it that represents that we need to add to the player's account? So we could write that script to fix everything up. It's like an authoritative document of what the game client or the game server is looking for. Obviously, it keeps the game team on track of what they need to put in. The QA team can test it. Analysts can use it. All these things keep all the team on the same page. And it ties in pretty closely with the next one, which we affectionately call DUG, Digital Offering and Unboxing Guide. This is our publishing team normally put this together, and it's just a big document. And the format of these things don't matter. It's just the type of content and intention of them is important. This one tends to be a PowerPoint, and it's explaining different editions of the game, SKUs, which platforms, the extra content you're going to produce. Just a slide explaining all that stuff and how it's put together. So one of those slides would have been, there is a limited edition version of the PC game, which comes with 2 DVDs in the box and 1 code, which represents the game and that extra gun, whatever it was. Clearly, you can see how that would align all the teams, and we could have resolved that problem in the first place, because it would have been set up right in the first place. And then end-to-end flows, they should be pretty obvious. The best example I have of this one, of where it helped, was on Battlefield 3, when obviously we're building a big Battlefield game itself, and you're adding this whole new thing of battle log as an interface for PC players in particular, and then also adding Origin on top of that as a whole new service. So each of these teams are working on these 3 different things, and they were all fine in their own right. But once you put it together and mapped out that whole player journey, we saw areas for improvement. So just one example being, you had to log into Origin, and then you had to log into Battlelog after you launched the game. That was a bad thing. We just implemented SSO, so whichever one you came into first, you automatically logged into the other one. Pretty simple stuff. But some other best practices. We'd recommend you run war rooms. If you've only got one location, great, it's one room. If you're a distributed team, have more than one. You'd have a screen or a projector or something like that in the room, which can show your metrics or graphs. If you see a big spike, or if you see a big dip, you might have a problem. You would have the devices in the room. If you're a console game, you've got consoles in there set up to play. If you're a mobile game, fine, mobiles. And have, ideally, that team we defined earlier, have those people that are on call for that shift in the room at the time, because it's so much easier to communicate. Just say, hey, I've noticed this weird thing on the website. Is that a problem, marketing guy? And you may not otherwise have written that email and reported something small. So you could really fix the tiny stuff as well as the big things. To do that, snacks are good. Coffee, donuts, lunch, have that there. That helps keep people in the room. So yeah, war rooms, good. Have an open phone line or a Skype chat or whatever as well if you have more than one. Kill switches. So a bad idea is to have broken features in your game. Good idea, have a way to turn them off to limit the damage they might cause. Great idea, define when you might actually use those kill switches and who has the authority to say if you will or will not use them. Example, if we use that mobile problem we started with, the store's broken, but maybe only in one country, and that may not be a huge country for your revenue. So if your kill switch was a kill all across the world, maybe you wouldn't use that switch at that time, and you've made that decision. You've worked out what threshold you want to put that at, and who's going to make the decision too. Localized support. So you can probably anticipate a lot of the questions that may come up at your event, whether it's the launch or the announce, whatever. So you can pretty predict what some of those questions are. You can pre-prepare what your answers are going to be, and you can localize them for all your markets that you care about. You can prepare answers, some generic stuff like, hey, we know there's a problem right now, we're dealing with it as well. Simple statements like that. But also figure out what you're going to do if something new comes up, because something new will come up. Who's going to write that messaging? Who's going to translate it if you want to? What's your plan for that? Onboarding third parties. The Battlefield 3 example I used before, the battle log team at the time was an external company to EA, so we had to make sure we brought them in as a partner into this. And this may apply to some of the smaller teams in this room if you work with external vendors for support or whatever it is. So that meant make sure they had VPN access, so they could see our wikis and we could see their documentation. Make sure our email firewall wasn't blocking their emails coming in and dropping them as spam. Include them on our mailing list so that when we emailed out to the team, they got them as well. Talk to your partners, figure out what it is that they need and what you need from them. So that kind of takes us through development, some best practices there, and there's way more than that, but I had to cut it down, like I said. But we get now to the launch window itself. And the kind of challenges we were seeing at this point were we had unclear support on escalation paths. We had little awareness of the issues between the different partners and what they were dealing with. There was no aggregate list of the issues of what this game was facing right now. And there was no common format for reporting of status of how a game is doing either, so we couldn't compare games. It made it harder to do post-mortems, things like that. So what do we do to try and solve all those things? Well, for the unclear support and escalation paths, I already kind of talked through the 24/7 coverage plan. We defined that out. We explicitly had the names on there, contact details, phone numbers, email addresses, who it was, defined out for each of those partners who those people are going to be for each of those shifts, if they're on call, if they're actually going to be somewhere, and where is it, which office is it in, which time zone is it in. We normally define that out for about 2 weeks around that launch window. Obviously, if things are going great, you can stop it after a week. That's no problem. If it's not, then you can extend it out. I've seen both happen. Yeah, and we get everyone into the triage flow, which I'll get to in a second, and we make sure all of this stuff is accessible to all of the teams that are working with us. We can't just hide it in Perforce that only the game team have access to, for example. So the little awareness of partner issues. We get all those partner teams, like I mentioned before, into this triage flow, which I'll talk through in a second. We set up those shifts and have those handover periods between them. So we might have 3 9-hour shifts that our overlap is used for, or half our overlap each end is used for that shift handoff. These are the issues that came up for our shift. This is what we did about them. This is what we need you guys to carry on doing to resolve that. So you can have that constantly passing the baton. Obviously, if you've only got 1 shift because you can't staff the whole thing, or you've only got 2, you have to adjust what the topic is, but that you get the idea. And run the war room. We talked about the war room, so that's what we do here. The last 2 were there was no aggregate list of issues, and there was no common format for reporting of how the game is doing. So what do we do about that? Just to quickly illustrate the example, our QA team and our game team may typically communicate through DevTrack or some tool like that, but the marketing team is not going to go there and look. There's going to be way too much information there that's just not relevant to them, and they probably don't have access to it anyway. They don't have a user credential set up, so that's no good to them. So we implemented a common tool that everyone had access to, just for the higher level of what's going on. In our case, we went with Jira. And then for the reporting side of things, we went with Confluence, because the 2 things from Atlassian work together well. There's someone in the room from Atlassian. I'll have to check later. And yeah, so this reduced a lot of the manual work for doing the reporting, because we had everything in these shared tools that we could automatically pull from Jira into Confluence to build those reports. Before, every issue was just an email, or a big chain of emails. You had to find the latest one, who's got the latest information, copy and paste it into another Word document or another email to make the report. A lot of manual work. It was just a waste of time, so we tried to automate some of that. The triage flow I mentioned, this is what it might look like. If we walk through the example from before, first of all, we tell all of the teams, whoever's on point for that time, it's up to you if you see a problem to report it. And you can do that in 1 of 2 ways. You can put it straight into a Jira form we have, which is going to prompt you for specific information. Or if you're on the go, you can just send an email to a special address, and that's going to automatically make a ticket for you. Either way, we end up in the middle there, where it's in our shared Jira project. And again, we're trying to keep the high level here, where all the teams get notified that there's this new problem and can decide if it impacts them or if they can help in some way. Let's say it's our earlier example where the content's missing. Now, instead of having that chain that we talked about, all of those teams can react to this at once. So the commerce part of the game team are going to react, and they might put it into DevTrack, and they might start working a bit through there in the details there. That's fine. But as they resolve these things, as the commerce team realizes, nope, not us, they can come update the high level. So everyone's aware of what's going on. The social team obviously put that tweet out straight away, and so on and so forth. So as things are resolved, they come back and update, and it's in Jira again, and it can get pulled out into that dashboard, like I said. And we can quickly show that. This is a couple of screenshots from the dashboard we built for Garden Warfare. A quick tour of it. The top corner, there is a button for reporting a new issue. That's on every page, very easy to get to. If you get the URL, it's on every page. You go down a bit and you can see when this was last updated and when to expect the next update, which is typically right around those shift handoff times. So you have an idea, execs have an idea of how fresh this information is. Simple traffic light scoring underneath that of how how are each of those teams doing? If they've got a whole bunch of issues, major issues, that'd be red, or if everything's fine, they're green. How are the different technologies you're using holding up? Like, is your Amazon service doing fine? Is, you know, a technology you built yourself, is that holding up? And then perhaps the features of the game. Is multiplayer working? Just yes or no. Is commerce working? Website, mobile app, whatever it is, are they all fine? So you get a very quick glance of what's going on and what to focus on if there is an issue, with some notes underneath explaining why, if there's something that isn't green, why is it not green? What are we doing about it? Just some brief notes. And obviously you can click through for more information further down the page. If we do scroll down the page some more, we can have an area there for some notices to keep the team on the same page. Partly from that shift handoff, hey, we had this problem, we had to do a server-side fix for it, we need you guys to do that deploy. It's on here, 2 a.m. there's going to be a deploy, PST, or be clear what it is. Some notices there of things that are going on. Then some of your key metrics, some of your server graphs, so you can see any big spikes or dips, and you have that historical record of how the game is done, because you can export this whole thing as a PDF for historical sake. Scroll down a little bit more, and there's that list of the issues in their priority, they're critical, whatever, on the left-hand side, the headline of what the problem is, who's got it, who's, the summary of what's being done about it, etc., all done automatically. None of that email digging, like I said. And then we have some more big squishy buttons at the bottom for more information. Explanation of the triage flow, more links, information, training. The middle thing is for more graphs and stats to understand how the game's doing. And that last one is linking up to the calendar for the tactical calendar I said before, those events that are going on. Because during a launch week, typically a game releases across different days in different parts of the world. So those are all going to be on here, so you can keep in line. So my message has been pretty simple, really. It's about defining your cross-functional team, doing that planning together, and having open communication. There's no point trying to hold things close to your chest and trying to hide things. Be open and your team can help you. I think this really applies to any team. It shouldn't just be AAA, it shouldn't just be EA or launch readiness teams at EA. It's not that specific. This is meant to be general. I'd be interested to hear how your teams do it if there's something we're missing as well. So really that's about it. So my contact details right here. We do have a few minutes for questions if anyone has any. So thanks for coming. Anybody? Okay, if you're too shy, come grab me up here or on the show floor, whatever. Happy to speak to anybody. Thanks for coming, guys.